Hello guys, welcome to the weirdest hill that I will happily die on. I hope you enjoy the view. A couple years ago during quarantine, I revisited the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy. They were movies that were very important to me as a kid. I loved them, and I wanted to give them a rewatch because I heard how well they aged, especially the first and second. And I watched the first and second movie, and I was blown away, obviously. They're great, pulpy blockbusters. So much love is poured into those things. It was from a time when CGI was still sort of being pushed and pulled at. Like, they didn't know if they could do everything, so they tried a bunch of new things and found out, oh, we can do this, oh, we can do that. I feel like nowadays, now that we know CGI can pull off anything with enough time and money, people seem less likely to experiment with it and be inventive with it, and they just accept it for what it is. And blockbusters from the early 2000s are so exciting because it is from this time where it was this new exciting tool that hadn't been pushed yet. And yeah, the first and second movies have aged wonderfully. I think the second one is even better than the first, and in some ways sort of makes the first one not as exciting to watch because you're just waiting to get to the second. But finally I got to the third movie. The third night, I think I watched them one night after another. I was like, might as well finish this trilogy. I know this movie's reputation. I know it is gonna be disappointing in comparison, but let's round this thing off. I got 20 minutes into the movie and I was like, okay, when does this get bad? 40 minutes into the movie, I was loving it, and I was like, okay, this is gonna get bad, so brace myself. And then finally, I just let myself go to the movie, and I loved it start to finish, and I was a bit lost. I was like, this is a bad movie? What are people talking about? And that whole night, the movie and its themes were wrestling in my head. And since then, I've revisited the movie twice. And most recently, last night, me and my friends went to see it at the AMC because they brought the whole trilogy back to theaters. I'm glad they didn't do the silly, skimpy thing and being like, oh, people don't like this one, so let's just do the first two. I'm glad they did all three because the third is the only one I was able to catch. But if there was something that happened that's funny, that feels so symbolic of how this movie is publicly perceived and spoken about versus how I feel. And that's right behind me while I was watching this movie. There was this couple sort of talking throughout the movie, and the girlfriend was laughing at all the serious parts. There's a part where Tobey Maguire cries in anguish, and she just let out a super inappropriate loud laugh over the whole theater. And I hear the boyfriend go, no, not now, come on. Like he was so disappointed that she was laughing through the serious scenes. And that's kind of how I feel with this movie. I think this movie is so corny, probably cornier than the first two combined. It's so pulpy, it's so comic booky, it's over the top. But never does that feel like not self-aware to me. People talk about the dancing, the emo Peter, as if it's this thing that the movie got wrong. But it's clearly just a perfectly natural progression of Peter's ego and him making the choice to lean into it rather than lean away from it. And it's doing it in a really comedic, entertaining way. One of the funniest scenes I've watched in a theatrical setting in a long time. Everyone was dying laughing. And then the jazz club scene where he gets up and dances, so over the top, so silly, but then it has that little stinger at the end where Gwen Stacy makes eye contact with MJ and apologizes to her. And I teared up at that part because it's such a beautiful thing you don't see. There's so many movies where the guy and the girl are showing off for the ex, and the new girl is just like a total bitch who's going along with it. Like, yeah, let's show her. But it's so refreshing to see in a superhero movie of all things that trope sort of defied and turned on its head, where they have this connection and she apologizes to the woman in the situation. And like, I didn't know this was what was happening. And it really elevates the tension of the story. And at its heart, this whole trilogy is a love story. And the first one is about, you got to crush on the girl. You got to win the girl over despite all the odds you're facing in your personal life. The second one is about, you have the girl. Let's secure this thing. Let's make it work. Get over those first couple humps and prove that you could be together. And then the third one comes and just muddies the waters so much in a way that I think is so thematically rich and beautiful, because the third one is, okay, we thought we secured this, but the problems are still there. There's still things that have to be worked on. This relationship is a plant that will die if we don't water it. And you and me are both running out of water. What are we going to do? We don't have the time and energy for each other. So they're watching their relationship die. And for a brief chunk, or a kind of bigger chunk of the movie, it does die. And, you know, she gets with Harry, and he's with Gwen, and there's this whole petty, jealous dynamic. And ultimately, the ending of the movie is so tragically beautiful. It's not a happy ending. It's not a sad ending. It's just a totally bittersweet message to leave off on. And that's these two people, despite everything they've been through, everything they've done to each other, they come back together because they don't know anything else. They don't have anything else to go back to. It is beautiful that they're going to give it a try, that they're going to forgive themselves and give this another try. But you can't help but think in the back of your head, it's like, Peter is still Spider-Man. He still, you know, is incapable of having a healthy dynamic in a relationship. And you know, she is at such a different point in her career and life, and she's just trying to figure it out, and he is incapable of listening and being there for her. And you have hope that they'll find a way to make it work, but you really don't know. And I know maybe a fourth one was at some point going to be made, but to end the trilogy on that note is just so perfect. It's just so beautiful and sad. And I think one of the reasons audiences pushed away from this movie, because it's not telling them a happy-go-lucky story. It's telling them a story of jealousy and envy and ego, and forgiveness being something that's incredibly hard to give, that you might never receive, and trying to forgive yourself being the ultimate hardest first step. And it has so much to say about these things, and it says it all through the lens of this superhero story that is so melodramatic and larger than life. And I just love it. The often cited too many villains critique, I just don't get at all, because, you know, this whole trilogy is about a guy whose personal life, his inner world and his outer world, are constantly at odds and tugging at each other. And the only appropriate escalation was to give him more. Now his career and his jealousy and his career is pulling at him through Venom. And his vengeful revenge, not jealousy, but just his vengefulness, and the Sandman, you know, they're pulling at each other. And then Harry is his relationship jealousy, and his ego and his relationship, and his betrayal of his best friend, or inability to communicate with his best friend. All these things are being perfectly symbolized by these three villains and pulling at him from all angles. And him finally teaming up with Harry in the end is a really fun, beautiful superhero 2-on-2 dynamic that it's like you feel these characters have grown so much and gone through so much, and still have so much to go up against. And I don't know, I think parts of it are a little messy. There's scenes here and there that are sloppy, but ultimately I think the mess and any studio interference that there was just kind of lends itself to a richer movie, a movie that isn't perfect, a movie that it has all these flawed layers that ultimately work to tell its themes of forgiveness and fighting against the want to lean into your ego, and the want to, you know, be there for yourself more than others. You know, can you even give yourself to others while also simultaneously watering your own plant? I don't know. It's and I come away from Spider-Man 1 and 2 just like I watched a fun movie. And you see me here, I'm kind of caught in my words, twisting my words, stumbling over my own tongue, because this movie is just so much richer than that. It's just something I have to like kind of work with each time I see it, and figure out what I took away from it this time, what really stuck with me this time, which is what happens to me when I watch my favorite movies. You know, I love the movies that leave me with so much to wrestle with afterwards. And as much as Spider-Man 1 and 2 are probably a little more well-rounded movies, I don't think they leave you with that sort of feeling. They don't leave you with that, well, how does this relate to my life? How have I been selfish? How have I been, emo Peter dancing in the streets, blissfully unaware that I've broken somebody's heart, blissfully unaware that my ego and vengefulness are taking over me, And ultimately, I think Spider-Man 1 is the weakest of the trilogy for that reason, because 2 just kind of reiterates and builds upon 1 so successfully that 1 starts to feel a little redundant. Like you need to get the feel for the characters. Willem Dafoe is great. It does a lot to develop the MJ and Harry and Peter triangle. But beyond that, like 2 just sort of is the better version of 1, but 3 is its own beast entirely. And I feel like watching 2 and 3, you kind of get what you need, and 1 is like a nice like setup. It's sort of like Uncharted, random comparison, but it's like 1 establishes the characters and is good to watch, and if you need to get that feel, that base. But if you do 2 and 3, or 2 and 3 and 4 in Uncharted's case, you sort of get the richness of the story regardless. But nonetheless, I love the whole trilogy. I think they're all fantastic movies. I freaking love Ursula. I think Ursula is one of the best performed like minor characters I've ever seen in a movie, like let alone a blockbuster, but a movie. Just she's so sweet and tender, and it just speaks to the heart of the movie to have this neighbor character who's so caring and maybe has a little crush on Peter, but she's also so supportive of him calling MJ and trying to make things right. And in the second movie, she brings him a piece of cake, and she's just so caring when her father, this landlord guy, seems a little cold and callous at times. It is just such a realistic character to implant in this larger-than-life story. And I love that about these movies. I think Tobey Maguire is the best Peter Parker there will ever be. Him and Kirsten Dunst do such a good job expressing with their faces. Like for every scene that like has been memed of Tobey Maguire screaming his heart out in anguish, which I think are devastating scenes, because in blockbusters we usually see very stoic characters. We see pain through a single tear. We see pain through like pursed lips and like, they don't let it just be full anguish. But Tobey Maguire gives his all to these scenes where he's screaming and he's crying, and it's just so powerful. And it's funny to hear people laugh during it, because I get it. He looks goofy. He looks over the top. You don't really see that in a blockbuster movie, but he does a great job. But on top of that, just the subtle expressions. I freaking love the proposal scene. There's so much tension there at the French restaurant when he's coming there blissfully unaware of all the pain MJ has, and he wants to propose, but then there's this jealousy with Gwen Stacy showing up, and then this whole comedy thing with Bruce Campbell as the French waiter who doesn't know when to bring the ring. And there's just this moment where MJ just goes off on Peter because she's jealous and she saw him kiss Gwen as Spider-Man, and he had just had, she's been boiling inside. And this is so relatable in a relationship. You have all these things inside you that maybe you've been hesitating to express while the other person is blissfully unaware, and finally something sets off. And then the look on Tobey Maguire's face when he realizes this isn't a happy date. This isn't the day he's gonna propose. This is something so much heavier. You see his face sink, and it's just fantastic acting. He's such a dorky guy. He's, especially the emo Peter stuff, he's a dorky. He is a dork's idea of a cool guy. But in those little moments, you see how powerful and how committed they are to these roles and these characters. And I just love this movie. I think time has been kind to it. I'm seeing a lot of reevaluation of it. I see a lot of Letterboxd reviews of people who are like, wait, what are people talking about? And I'm well in line with those people. I don't really get it. I don't get what people don't see in this movie. I get that it's messy, but like my favorite movies are messy. My favorite movies are imperfect and flawed and try things and throw stuff at the wall. regardless of the neatness of the mess it leaves, you know. And I just love that Sam Raimi, despite studio interference, despite not really wanting to do things that they were making him do, sort of wove it together in this still very potent, beautiful, bold story for a blockbuster. And it just grows on me every time. And I hope if you love this movie, you love it. If you don't like this movie, I'm not trying to change your mind, but if I have one suggestion, it's give it a rewatch sometime with an open mind. You know, I think as much as we can choose how we take in a movie, it's easy to go into this movie like the woman behind me in the theater, like this is a joke and you're laughing through all the serious moments. But just watching this on a quiet night on your own and giving it the gravitas that I think some of the scenes deserve, it might surprise you. I don't know. But it definitely surprised me, and I love it. And I love movies. I love you guys, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye-bye.